I don't actually think being yourself is always good advice because which self are you referring to? What if you're actually not even stuck? What if you're just trying to build a new life with an identity that has already expired? Because I think that's something that we don't talk about enough. Sometimes you don't need more discipline. You don't need another morning routine. You don't need another productivity system. You don't need another 5 step plan for becoming the person that you've always wanted to be. Sometimes the problem is that you're asking a version of yourself who doesn't exist anymore to continue to run your life now. And that may sound dramatic to you, but I'm realizing this because I'm actually living it. I'm a new mother, I'm living abroad, I've left behind an entire version of my life. I'm rebuilding a huge part of that life from scratch. And probably the strangest part isn't even the external changes. It's realizing that some of the ways I thought about myself for all of my life literally no longer fit. And I've been meeting the absolutely uncomfortable question, who the fuck even am I right now? And honestly, I think that's one of the most powerful questions you could ask yourself. Because sometimes what we call being stuck is actually just us continuing to perform that identity that no longer fits the script. And once I started seeing my life through that lens, I started to notice something. Your identity isn't the story that you tell yourself. It influences what you notice, what you tolerate, what you choose, what you think is possible for you, and then ultimately what you repeatedly do, your behavior. So, if that is true, what happens when you stop trying to become a different person and start practicing being her now? That's what I want to talk about. Now, before I get into what I mean by identity shift, I want to tell you why I'm actually talking about this. Because this isn't just a concept that I picked up on the internet and decided I would make a video about. I've had to confront this shit in my own life every single day. And honestly, most of it has been uncomfortable as hell. Because when you change your life, you don't just change your circumstances. You start discovering which parts of your personality were actually you all along. Which parts were adaptations, which parts were out of survival mode, which were expectations of other people. I think one of the craziest things about growing up is realizing that you can spend years becoming someone because that's who you thought you were supposed to be. That's the trajectory you were expected to fulfill because of your family, your environment, your relationships, culture, whatever it is, but not necessarily because it was actually your passion or your purpose. And then one day you look around and you're like, wait a minute, who the fuck even am I? Do I even like this person anymore? And I think that's actually one of the most healthy questions that you can ask yourself, because sometimes what we call being stuck is really just us perpetuating that identity out of habit, not being intentional. And it's uncomfortable because we're not supposed to be there anymore. You learned how to just survive a certain way for that season. You learn how to give and receive love in a certain way, how to make money in a certain way, how to behave within your family dynamic, what kind of woman that you're supposed to be, and then maybe what kind of mother that you're going to be from that platform. You learned what success was going to look like and then failure. And eventually all of those things become your story. This is just who you are. But is it? And when's the last time that you've actually asked yourself that question and been honest about the answer? This is where I might piss a couple of you off, okay? I don't actually think being yourself is always good advice, because which self are you referring to? The self that I was when I was 12? The self that my family needs me to be? The self that I became to get love? The self that I needed to become to make money, or because I was afraid of something? We talk about authenticity like there's this perfectly preserved real you sitting underneath everything, just waiting to be uncovered. And maybe there is, but I think that it's a lot more layered than that. I think sometimes becoming yourself requires, no, sometimes becoming yourself requires deciding what you're no longer available to be. And I think becoming a mother has really intensified this for me personally, because it's this constant identity shift. You're consistently shedding expanding, contracting. You're becoming a different version of yourself all the time. Every month, it seems. You're discovering parts of yourself you didn't even know existed up until now. And then meanwhile, you're still expected to function like the exact same person you were before you had this completely transformative experience. It's not realistic. I've had to let go of versions of myself that I've spent years, probably all of my life building. I've had to leave behind environments where people had a very specific idea of who I was. I've changed my relationship to money, to work, family, spirituality, my own ambition, even my understanding of what I want my life to look like. And at a certain point, you realize you can't keep trying to build this new life with an identity that's still committed to the old one. So when I talk about identity shifting, that's what I'm referring to. That's the lane that I want to go down today. Not becoming somebody fake, not bypassing reality, not sitting around, pretending that circumstances don't exist. I'm talking about consciously deciding who you are going to be in relationship to those circumstances, and then actually learning how to live from that place. So I want to make this a really practical type of video because identity, I feel like, can sound like a really abstract, very spiritual concept, and it can be. But for this purpose, I want you to think about one thing in your life that you keep saying that you want to change. It could be money, it could be your body, it could be your relationships, your confidence, your career, your consistency. Now, ask yourself, what would someone who already believed differently about themselves do differently? Because your answer to that question is probably a lot more useful than another 100 pieces of advice about what you should do. Your self concept isn't just the adjectives that you use to describe yourself. It's your internal, most intimate feelings about yourself. It influences what you notice, what you tolerate, what you think that you deserve. It influences the decisions that you make when nobody is watching and what you even consider an option for yourself. If you think that you're someone who's bad with money, for example, you're going to interpret financial situations through that identity. If you think that you're someone who never follows through, every unfinished project becomes evidence for you. If you think you're someone who isn't confident, you're going to interpret all discomfort as proof. And that's the loop. I believe this about myself, I behave accordingly, I get the evidence, and then I believe it even more. But hear me when I say this. The loop doesn't care whether identity is true. It just needs the evidence. It just feeds off of that evidence. So this is good news, okay? This is good news, babe, because it means that you don't have to completely believe the new version of yourself yet. You can start by giving yourself different evidence. So if I'm becoming someone who takes herself seriously, I have to actually start taking my ideas seriously with no friction. If I'm becoming someone who always follows through, I have to consistently follow through on what I say I'm going to do, honoring my word. If I'm becoming someone who's financially resourceful, I have to start acting like a resourceful person, even before I feel that financial security. If I am becoming someone who takes care of her body, I don't need this 6-month transformation plan. I need to move my body today, right now. Identity isn't something that you just think. It doesn't live just in your head. It is the things that you repeatedly demonstrate to yourself, the actions that you take, the behaviors that you keep up. And that's where I think that this conversation is really important because you can actually get addicted to that becoming. Maybe you're always preparing, you're always healing, you're always learning, you're always planning, you're always getting ready, you're always becoming. But eventually, you have to actually be. And that's where identity work begins. So instead of asking, how do I become her? Ask, if I already understood myself as her, how would I move today? You see the difference? Now, I want to get down to the nitty gritties here, okay? What if you're using your circumstances to explain your identity? I'm broke, so maybe that means you think that you're bad with money. I'm overwhelmed, so that must mean that I'm inconsistent. I'm single right now, so maybe nobody wants me. I'm struggling, so that must mean that I'm failing. I'm not where I want to be, so I'm behind. Is any of that registering? Does that sound familiar? Because those are two completely different statements. They have two different energies behind them. This is happening to me versus this is who I actually am. Confusing those two things is where we give circumstances way more authority than it actually deserves. And if you look at certain parts of my own life right now, you could probably create a very convincing story about who I am. Like I said, I'm a new mom. I live abroad. I'm rebuilding about 75% of my life essentially from scratch. There are things that I don't have figured out yet. There are some financial realities I'm navigating. There are things about my future I genuinely don't know. And I could very easily make all of those circumstances mean everything and allow them to dictate how I feel about myself. But the distinction I'm learning to make is this: circumstances are simply information, they are not an identity. I can acknowledge exactly what is happening in my life without deciding that what is happening is the limit of who I am or who I'm capable of. Now, I've actually been thinking a lot about this lately, and especially on my little walks, my little hot girl walks. I was on a walk the other day and I realized that I was trying so hard to get clarity. I wanted to understand all the details. What happens next? How is this going to play out? What does this mean exactly? What am I supposed to be doing today, right now? And at some point, you have to think, maybe I'm actually not lacking clarity. Maybe I was just uncomfortable with the clarity that I actually already have. And girl, that hit me because maybe the answer isn't always searching for more clarity. Maybe it's just being so present enough, clear enough to notice what's already there in front of my face. But at the end of the day, I don't even think that I need another answer. I think that I just need to accept the answers that are staring me in my face. And that's just acceptance, right? But I don't mean passive acceptance. I don't mean accepting it and not doing anything about it. I mean radical acceptance, being so for real with yourself, actually taking inventory, okay? This is where I am right now. This is what's happening at the moment. This is what I have and what I don't today. This is who I've been, and then this is who I'm choosing to become. Radical acceptance is actually so freeing because it does put you back in the present, which is such a good way to think and make decisions from, in that driver's seat, right? You stop fighting reality and then just get in tune with yourself. And you can start moving with life instead of constantly allowing it to push against you. And another thing that I don't completely agree with, like on this topic and in the self development space, is I don't think consistency means doing the same thing every day, especially not for me. Okay. I'm a mama, like I said. I don't have the same 24 hours every day. Some days I'm creative. Some days I can barely think straight. Some days I have an hour to myself, and some days I have none. If consistency means the same, I'm fucked. Okay. But if consistency means returning, that's something I can actually get behind. I can build my life around that. Because yes, of course, I want to be more consistent. I need to be more consistent. That's what actually moves things forward. But my consistency cannot look exactly the same every single day. It has to account for the life that I'm actually living in real time. So just because it looks differently every day, the order might be out of order, and that doesn't mean that I'm not becoming. It means I'm becoming in real time. Okay, so consistency for me has to mean returning to myself, returning to the things that I said that mattered, returning to the identity I'm building in real time. And maybe the biggest trap of all is that we keep making our future selves responsible for saving our present selves. When I've lost the weight, I'll look like this, I'll wear this. When I'm rich, I'll have this. When I'm confident, I'll feel like this. When I have everything figured out, this and this and this will happen. Then I'll be her. Is that not the most ass backwards thing that you've ever heard? What if the woman that you're waiting to become is built through the decisions that you make before you have the evidence that you're even her? Not pretending that you have things that you don't. Okay, I'm not suggesting that you lie to yourself or ignore reality, but asking, what would she do with what I have today? That's just a better question, because you're not waiting for your life to change before you change it. You're participating fully in those changes, in those transformations. And once you start doing that, the external stuff will start to shift as well. Once you change the way that you see yourself, your decisions start to change, your standards change, your relationships evolve, your boundaries change. What you say yes to, what you tolerate, what you spend your time and energy on, what you notice, it all changes. It becomes a domino effect. And just a side note here, please know that not everybody is going to cheer you on during this shift. Sometimes people are very uncomfortable with you changing. They are comfortable with that version of you that they feel like they've already spent time understanding. And when you change, it can and will shift that relationship. Now, I'll save that for another video though. I could go on a tangent about it. I actually have a lot to say about navigating relationships while you're in this messy middle. So if that's something that you do want me to talk about more specifically, let me know down in the comments below and I'll get that rolling for you. But right now, my focus at this moment isn't trying to go back to who I was and better her. I'm not trying to recreate that old life. I'm not trying to become this perfect version of myself anymore. I'm just figuring out who I am when I stop performing the version of me that I had already outgrown. And babe, it's not all fun and games, okay? It's not all fun and games. This is hard work. This is diligent work. I've lost a lot of people, many things, many opportunities. You know, sometimes your loved ones don't even recognize you anymore. And sometimes you don't even recognize yourself. I really feel that you need that season of solitude, this season of the in between to remove all of those distractions, all of the dead weight, all of the you that's not even you anymore. And please don't see it as punishment. It's not at all. Most times that's actually where the real identity shift happens internally with yourself, by yourself. Now, I spent a lot of time trying to maintain this continuity, like trying to make sure the person that I was yesterday made sense with the person that I am today. But it's so stifling thinking like that. And I'm realizing she doesn't have to. I can change my mind. I can change my direction. I can change my standards, my relationship with money and people and things, myself. I can become a completely different woman. And I don't need permission from the version of me who used to exist. I'm not trying to collect more potential. I'm trying to cash out on all the potential I've already collected. All right. So, babe, cash out on yourself. All right. I'm cashing out on everything that I've learned. So, my skills, my endurance, my stamina, all right, my knowledge, my wisdom, my creativity, my ability to communicate and just to figure all this shit out, all of it. I'm cashing out. I don't want to spend the rest of my life collecting potential. I want to use it. All right. I'm cashing out on the woman that I've already spent so much, all of my life, really, all those years becoming. And I'm actually so clear that's what this next chapter is for me. Not becoming somebody else, becoming fully embodied in myself. So maybe don't ask yourself, who do I want to become? Ask something a little bit more direct. Who am I currently being that I no longer want to be? Like process of elimination, you know? And then finally, what would that version of me do today, right now? Not tomorrow, not when your circumstances change, today. And that's it. One thing. Then just go do it. Just give yourself the evidence. That's what your life was, that's what the identity is going to feed off of. That's how you start teaching yourself that the identity that you really are thinking and being and becoming is real in real time. So if you're watching this and you're in that weird place where your old life doesn't really fit anymore, but your new life hasn't fully materialized yet, I want you to know that you don't need to have the whole thing figured out. You may just need to decide who you're going to be while you're figuring it out. And maybe that's your identity shift. Maybe it's not becoming somebody completely new or starting from scratch. Maybe it's finally allowing the person you've been underneath all of that conditioning, those expectations, the fear, the survival, and those old stories to just actually take up space. And I'm figuring that out for myself. You know, that's literally what this channel is. I'm not here because I have it all figured out. I'm here because I'm actually doing it. I'm building the life. I'm becoming the woman. I'm raising my son and navigating motherhood. I'm figuring out money and creativity and technology, relationships, identity, and whatever the fuck the future is going to look like. And I'm documenting the process, not just for you, but for me, really. So if you're somewhere in that process too, I would love for you to stick around because I have a feeling we're going to have a lot to talk about.